Sultanate of Oman television with tonight's news bulletin. First, the headline. His Majesty the Sultan sends 2 cables of greetings to the President of Iran and Pakistan. Supreme Committee concerned with the following up the development of COVID-19 issues new decisions. The Minister of Health announces registering of 3 new infected cases with COVID-19 and 17 people are completely cured of the virus infection. Good evening once again, live from this news center of the Sultanate of Oman television. Here we present to you tonight's news bulletin. His Majesty the Sultan sends 2 cables of greetings to the Presidents of Iran and Pakistan. The Supreme Committee concerned with the following up the development of COVID-19 issues new decisions. And the Minister of Health announces registering of 3 new infected cases with COVID-19 and 17 people are completely cured of the virus infections. Thus, those were the headlines, and now for the news in detail. His Majesty Sultan Haytham bin Tariq sends a cabal of greetings to His Excellency Dr. Hassan Rouhani, President of Iran, on the occasion of the Iranian New Year, Nowruz. His Majesty the Sultan also sends a cabal of greetings to His Excellency Arif Alvi, President of Pakistan, on his country's National Day. Within the pursuit to curb the outbreak of COVID-19, the Supreme Committee concerned with the following up the development of this pandemic locally and globally made the following decisions, which will take effect tomorrow, March 23rd, 2020. Reducing the number of employees present in the government workplaces to no more than 30% of the total number of staff to complete the necessary work, while the rest start their work remotely as determined by authority in which the employee works. Heads of the units must take the necessary measures to ensure that the core business is not affected by the downsizing of the staff, and to take necessary precautionary measures to prevent the spread of the pandemic. Banning all kinds of gathering in the public places and taking appropriate measures against the violators, closing all customer services halls in all public and private institutions, and using electronic services as much as possible. Closing all exchange units, as banks shall provide the exchange services while taking the precautionary measures to prevent the spread of the pandemic. Stopping printing, distribution and sales of newspapers, magazines and other publications of all kinds, and preventing the sale and distribution of publications issued outside the Sultanate. The committee urges the private sector to create suitable mechanisms to work remotely and reduce workers' gathering during working hours. The committee also urges commercial institutions and individuals to limit dealing with banknotes and using e-payment as an alternative, as the banknotes could spread the virus among society. The committee calls everyone to adhere to all issued decisions and recommendations for the public interest. May Allah protect all from any harm. Minister of Health announced in a statement that it had recorded 3 new cases with coronavirus COVID-19 of its citizens related to contact with previous infected cases traveled outside the Sultanate, bringing the total cases registered in the Sultanate to 55 cases. The ministry assured that 17 cases have already been recovered. The Minister of Health calls upon all to adhere to quarantine procedures as instructed and to avoid public places or places of worship, clean hands with soap and water, avoid touching face, nose and eyes, follow hygienic habits when sneezing and coughing, complete adherence to social distancing and instructions issued by the Supreme Committee and the Ministry of Health is required. With our commitment, we prevent ourselves, the families, and the community from the coronavirus. To enlighten us further on the COVID-19, with us is Professor Peterson from the Ministry of Health, specialist in infectious diseases and consultant at the Directorate General of Diseases Surveillance and Control. Professor, welcome to 7 o'clock News Bulletin.
Hello, nice. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Professor, could you kindly tell us about the current situation of COVID-19 in general?
Well, I think you very nicely summed it up that we have 55 cases and 17 have recovered. What we could add is that most of these cases, they have connections outside Oman. So if we have local transmission in the country, it's still at a very, very low level. So we cannot really detect it. So I think we are doing very well.
So that means Oman is doing quite good in dealing with this pandemic. What else would you like to add in that?
Well, I think that when you introduce the topic, you emphasize social distancing. And I think that is a very important point. And I think that one of the reasons that Oman is doing well is that we did these measures very early. So if a case is coming into Oman, as we have seen with most of the 55 cases, they are not really transmitting to a lot of people because of the social distancing. That means that if you are infected, you are not seeing a lot of people, so you cannot pass on the infection to a lot of people. And this is the most important tool we have right now. Of course, we are looking very much to what is happening in other parts of the world. And for instance, in Italy, they have more than 30,000 cases, which has developed over the past 3.5 weeks. And we really very much want to avoid that situation. And that is why it's so important that we, to protect all of us, both you and me and our neighbors and our grandparents, that we keep the social distancing and keep a good hand hygiene.
Part from what is being decided by the Higher Committee dealing with COVID-19 is social distancing, which you have mentioned there. And what has been noticed, many of the workers tend together in groups, and this is definitely violating the rules and putting people at risk. What advice would you like to give in this regard?
Well, I think it's important to really understand that none of us is without risk, no matter what kind of work we are doing and where we are in society. So we have to follow these rules, all of us. And in other countries, they ask the police to break up gatherings of people. If you are more than 10 people in one single spot, you will be asked to please disperse. And that is one of the things we could do here. But basically, it's important to realize that we are all in the same boat. We all have the responsibility for each other. And if you break the rules, you are actually a danger to all of us. So please adhere to the guidelines, because they seem to work. We have a very low number in Oman, so what we are doing is working.
Well, indeed, that we have to adhere to the rules and regulations, and we would like actually to commend what has been happening, the follow-up actually from the High Committee, as well as the Minister of Health has been doing wonderful. People need really to focus and need to follow all those rules which have been put in order to prevent the spread of coronavirus. That was with us was Eskil Peterson. Thank you for the details, and we hope everyone will follow the instructions. Their Excellencies Under-Secretaries of Health Ministries in GCC countries discussed updates on COVID-19 and exchanged their experiences and measures in combating the spread of the virus. In the second video conferencing meeting, their Excellencies discussed work mechanisms, future measures to check up passengers and travelers in border checkpoint, self-isolation reports and quarantine management. Their GCC Health Under-Secretaries discussed the health awareness messages that will be advertised to various members of the community. Their Excellencies commended the great efforts made by health stakeholders in GCC countries and their tangible contributions in combating the spread of COVID-19. The public prosecution calls on everyone to heed to the decisions from the Supreme Committee dealing with COVID-19 developments to avoid any legal action against them in case of violation. In implementation of the Supreme Committee decisions, the public prosecution will receive complaints and applications over its website, which will be processed electronically, and it will not receive any one unless summoned. The COVID-19 spread around the world continues to show an upward trend as countries recorded new cases, noticing an increase in the number of people seeking medical assistance. Italy recorded over 6,600 new cases of COVID-19 and the daily mortality rate exceeded China to reach 800. The total number of people who died from the novel corona increased to 4,800 cases. While in China, the spread of virus has been slowed down. However, it is resurfaced with 45 cases recorded for people coming from outside the country and one national who came in contact with a traveler who was in Turkey. The Chinese government enacted new measures, including quarantine for travelers for 2 weeks and rerouting all travelers to other airports outside Beijing. Spain recorded the third highest number of recorded cases with over 25,000 people infected and 1,720 people died from COVID-19. In the United States of America, authorities in New York, California, New Jersey, and Illinois asked the people to remain home and decided to close non-essential stores to minimize the spread of the virus. In India, the streets were empty as the government imposed a curfew for 14 hours and commercial flights were suspended for 1 week. In Iran, Ministry of Health announced the death cases increased to 1,685 after recording 129 new death cases of COVID-19. Cases of COVID-19 around the world increased to 308,000 and mortality rate jumped to 13,000 while 96,000 people recovered. You're watching the Sultanate of Oman television, and yet to come in our news bulletin. The effects of the low pressure continue in a number of the wilayas of the Sultanate.
The Ministry of Health urges citizens and residents who are subject to quarantine and isolation not to leave their homes for their own safety and to safeguard their families and the community from the contagious coronavirus COVID-19. The Ministry of Health also calls on citizens and residents to stay home.
Welcome back to the news from the Sultanate of Oman television. As COVID-19 spreads aggressively around the world, measures were implemented to stop the spread of the virus. These include self-isolation of the suspected cases remaining home unless necessary and maintaining social distancing when going outside for work and necessary shopping. However, families remains the first-line defense by encouraging their children to maintain their study, remain home, and practicing good hygiene. In Wilayat of Sur, families have responded positively to the instructions of the Supreme Committee on COVID-19. Streets are empty and many commercial areas and tourism destinations are closed to counter the spread of COVID-19. The Public Authority for Civil Aviation issued the third report regarding the latest analysis of National Multi-Hazard Early Warning Center, which shows that effects of the trough Al-Rahma will continue over the Sultanate until tomorrow, Monday. The authorities stressed that there are chances of varied intensity rainfalls, occasionally thunder showers, accompanied by active wind and hail over all of the governorates of the Sultanate. Southeasterly dust-raising winds are expected over the governorates of Al-Wusta, Dhafar, Al-Dakhiliya, and Al-Dhahira. Over the rest of the governorates, it will be westerly to northwesterly. Seas will be moderate to rough along most of the coast of the Sultanate with a maximum wave height of 3 meters. The Public Authority for Civil Aviation advises public to take precautions during rain and not to cross flowing wadis and to follow the latest weather bulletins, in addition to adhere to the instructions from the Supreme Committee dealing with COVID-19 to stay home and never leave unless it is too necessary. A number of governorates and wilayas of the Sultanate witnessed rains with varied intensity, which led some wadis and their tributaries to overflow. Moderate rains were witnessed by the governorate of Musandam, and varied intensity rains fell over the governorates of North and South Al-Batina. This is the Sultanate of Oman television. Before we end tonight's bulletin, here are the main points once again. His Majesty the Sultan sends 2 cables of greetings to the presidents of Iran and Pakistan. The Supreme Committee concerned with the following up the development of COVID-19 issues new decision. The Ministry of Health announces registering of 3 new infected cases with COVID-19, and 17 people are completely cured of the virus infection. And with that, we do conclude this news bulletin. Thank you for joining us, and good night.